Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Total Celebrity Show. You can check me out on Twitter at TotalTutor, NeilHaley.com, and all the exciting places. And just dealing with yesterday's awesome playoff game, the Steeler win, but cold as can be. But I do have on the program author Doug Box of Texas Patriarch. Doug, thanks for calling. How are you?
Neil, I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Absolutely, Doug. Let's go to your background and why you wrote the book. Again, a lot, as I was reading up on the specific things, has to do with what your father was able to accomplish, and you came through and sharing a lot of that in your book, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah, he was able to accomplish so many things. You know, we were talking football. He was an old Detroit Lion, all-pro wide receiver for the Lions back in the heyday of the 50s. And he scaled the American dream. He grew up in poverty, a child of the Great Depression. His real break was pro football. It allowed him to escape his impoverished circumstances. It allowed him to go to law school in the off-season at Baylor University in Waco, and then he worked his way up the corporate ladder and became the CEO of one of the biggest construction firms in the world, the George A. Fuller Construction Company, based in Manhattan, New York. And from there, we had Dad was one of these kind of guys who was sort of like the Texas version of Forrest Gump. He could do no wrong, right?
Oh, yeah.
And toward the end of his life, there were problems because I was the youngest of four sons, so it was a family-owned business. And toward the end of his life, we had not done enough planning, particularly succession planning in the family-owned firm, to enable us to continue the business, and so we had to sell the business. We were in a forced sale situation. Very sad story, really. That's why I wrote the book, Texas Patriarch.
Because let's talk about, you said, so because of his fame in the NFL, it was very easy for him to find an entrepreneurial niche, it sounds like, Doug, right?
Yeah, I mean, being a star, along with guys like Doak Walker,
right,
and Bobby Lane, Yale Larry, Leon Hart, really opened a lot of doors for him, and it gave him a certain notoriety. And this big company in New York City wanted to expand into the Southwest, and they wanted to open up a Dallas office, and they wanted a couple of big shots, to be their glad handers, and they hired my dad and Doak Walker to move to Dallas from Detroit, and that's the reason I was born in Dallas. And so they started a big firm. They started the Southwest arm of this big construction firm, and then from there, my dad everything he everything he touched turned to gold.
Wow, and there you go. That's that's the opportunity. So, what kind of business did you guys have? Tell us about that. Yeah.
We were primarily, like I said, started out in construction, and then he diversified into oil and gas refining. Making leaded gasoline back in the days when we had leaded gasoline. And then he got into offshore oil and gas exploration, offshore Louisiana, and just got lucky. If you're going to be in the oil business, you got to hit some big wells and have some luck on your side. And he did. He hit some big wells in the Gulf, and he then formed a public company called Box Energy Corporation. And it was a $200 million market cap company, $50 million cash flow, and things were really going great. And then in the middle of everything, at the age of 70, believe it or not, he goes to sleep one night in the hotel room out of town, and he has a heart attack, and he dies in his sleep. And the four sons are left with this business, and not a clearly defined leader, not a succession plan, no sense of shared values between the four sons. And, young siblings, especially young male siblings, can sometimes be pretty competitive, pretty aggressive with each other. We wound up losing the whole thing.
Now, before he died, Doug, it was a successful business then, right? When he was running things.
Oh, yes.
Correct. So basically, he didn't have any contingency plans in a lot of ways for you guys to take over the four sons. He just was going with the flow and thought thought nothing was going to happen to him, and then just out of nowhere dies, and there's no real plan for you guys right after.
No,
Yeah.
there was no real plan. I mean, we had done some estate planning, like he had a will and we had a buy-sell agreement. We had some things like that. But as far as the family and the four brothers, knowing how to work together, knowing how to respond to this crisis of having a deceased founder, and how to continue on the business and work together, and who's going to do what, we ended up fighting over it, because we were all educated and thought we were smart, and everybody felt entitled to their own opinion. And had he stepped down sooner, rather than waiting till his sudden death, things would have had a much better chance. I'm not saying it would have been guaranteed, but we would have had a much better chance of surviving that sudden death scenario if he had stepped down sooner, retired at, say 65 or even sooner than that. But, anytime you go through a sudden death transition in leadership, man, it just puts so much pressure on the family, and it just put us in chaos. And then, next thing you know, we're suing each other in court. We lawyered up. It was just terrible. You can read all about this in my new book, Texas Patriarch.
So, did you have a good relationship with the other brothers?
Yes and no, Neil. Thanks for asking that question. We do not discuss this story. We do have a good relationship. We are cordial. We can talk about how the Cowboys are going to be the Steelers in the Super Bowl. We can talk about those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about this story. We can't laugh about what happened. And I think when you're able to laugh about something, that's when you're kind of over it. We're not able to discuss and talk about this. We can talk about the weather. We can talk about various news, politics, sports, but we don't go here. We don't go to this story at all. Right. And so I would say it's a mixed bag there, really.
Yeah, it sounds like a mixed bag for sure. And so it's like, I mean, you have this relationship, but then when the money, you talked about a lot of money this business was worth.
Yeah, I'm talking about hundreds of millions of dollars.
Exactly. And everybody has been living pretty well because of Dad, right? At that point in time. Yes. So you're like, it's almost like we're in Dallas all over again, the show Dallas, in the fact that family members, when it comes to money, they start to think more about money than family life, and then no contingency plan, and there you go, and then the business falls apart. Sounds like, right?
Exactly. Anytime you mix family with money and power and enterprise, it's a risky proposition. And my business as an outside neutral consultant to families is to be an advocate for them to have some kind of process. I'm not sure exactly what that is, because every family business situation is so unique, so different.
Exactly.
And I cannot prescribe things over the airwaves and say, well, here's what you ought to do every single time. I don't know that yet. But what I do know is you've got to be proactive about managing the family human element, the trust and the communication, and how's this whole thing going to work out. It's not a question of if or when, mom or dad retires. It's not a question of if. It is a question of when. It's going to happen, No one lives forever. And so we're going to have to deal with the future now. And that's part of my job, is to get families motivated to plan and do the hard work that they don't want to do right now. And I do that hard work for them, and I try to make it easy on them.
So, Doug, basically, you learned from your mistake. You learned from this terrible thing where if you were in that situation, Doug, meaning your experience now and what you do now, with your three brothers, you probably all have the wealth still. You probably have the business still. You learned from your mistakes, it sounds like, Doug, right?
Yes, I did.
And then
Absolutely.
And found your mission from that. So let's talk about the mission. So I know that you want, and we want people to pick up the book, but that mission, so after this whole horrific thing, what made you want to do this advocacy? What made you want to help people through this estate type planning things?
I think the thing that made me want to do this the most is the enormous cost that we incurred in litigation.
Right.
We try to resolve our problems through the court systems, and you can't do that, particularly in a family-based enterprise.
No, you can't.
It just doesn't work. I've tried it. It failed miserably, and I'm here, and I'll go anywhere I can go. I'll talk to anybody, any group, any family business group that wants me. I'll go talk to them and tell them, you know, I don't care what you do, but you can't go litigate away your family business disputes.
Well,
a guy wearing a robe to work, you know, does not care about your petty family problem. He just doesn't care. It's not his job to care.
It's all business. It's nothing but business and making sure everything is fair, but not looking at fairness of the relationship and not looking at ultimately the success of the business. So we got to read the book, Doug, to see how the business failed. Did you guys were left with nothing, all four of you? Left with nothing?
I wouldn't say nothing.
Nothing?
I wouldn't say nothing. We did walk away with, you know, sizable assets individually, but we left a ton of money on the table compared to what we could have
because energy
and should have.
Yeah, because of what's happening today in this business. And,
oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, we sold an oil and gas company in 1997. Now, if you don't know anything more than that,
oh gosh!
If you just cut me off right now.
Yeah. So if I go and say I go ahead into Dallas and say I know I might have a possible client who owns an oil and gas company, I'm going to be pretty set for a long time, aren't I? And specifically representing them and doing things if you know or have a piece in that business because that is just huge right now, right? A business like that.
Sure.
So but you guys sold it not for what you should have sold it for. Gotcha.
Absolutely. We left. Oh gosh, probably, and I'm embarrassed to say this publicly, we probably left $100 million on the table because, you know, the price of oil quintupled from 97. We went through it.
Right.
Oil, I mean, I don't know. Crude oil was $28 a barrel, and I think in 97, maybe even less than that. And then by 2006, it's 100.
Oh gosh. Well, so Doug, so your business now is you're still an entrepreneur, but you're an entrepreneur in a different way. And you probably are not as stressed as you were when you were an entrepreneur in that way. Am I correct?
No, I don't. We don't have near the lifestyle that we used to have. But I'll tell you, you know what the biggest loss is not so much the money. And we've been talking about money, and that's always important. But the biggest loss that I've experienced and my family's experienced is the loss of what I call social capital and the identity. We didn't realize how much our identity was wrapped up in this family enterprise. And you sometimes don't know that until you get on the other side of it, and then often it's too late. And you see, you know, because we grew up with this thing, you know. This was our wherewithal. This is the thing that put us through school and college. And it's the thing that identified. People thought of the business and they thought of us. And we were an important pillar of the community. You know, we created jobs. We hired people. We put other people's kids through school and through college. And that was very important. And that's very rewarding to be able to do that, to create jobs and to help people, you know, going through tough times, you know, whether it be a kid getting a sickness or a disease or something, and you help them out in various ways. So many things you can do with a corporate animal like that you can't do on your own.
All right, Doug, where's the best place we can purchase your book and learn more about you? Where's the best place we can go?
Oh, sure. You can look at the book and buy it at Amazon.com.
Okay. Or
BarnesandNoble.com. It's available in ebook as well as physical book. It's less than $20. Of course, the ebooks I think all sell for something like $9, and I think my book, physical copy of it, is like $18 or something like that. So it's very doable. Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, and that should take care of it.
All right,
down here in Dallas, we are in all the Barnes and Noble bookstores in Texas. Most of the Barnes and Noble stores are carrying the book down here, but I don't know about your neck of the woods.
Well, we're all over the world, so people easily can purchase it. So, Doug, thanks for calling. I appreciate you taking the time, and best of luck to you.
Neil, thanks so much for having me on the show, and have a great week.
You too. Take care, man. Okay.
Okay, man.
All right, see you, Bob.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to Author's Corner, and we'll be back in just a moment.